Hey everybody, it's Espira and welcome back to another Wednesday Webcam Weekly hosted in the main MHA Discord. And this week I'm joined by Jellyfishguy. How you doing?
Hey man, I'm doing just fine. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you here. So we had the inaugural Wednesday Weekly last week, which was super exciting. We had over 100 players, which I think is absolutely phenomenal going into, probably one of the first webcam tournaments. A lot of players, it was probably their first ever webcam event, and I think it left a really good mark. I know that you yourself, you actually played in it, and how did you feel about the experience in terms of the first Wednesday Weekly?
And it was a long day, but it was nice seeing everyone come together from all sorts of places all around the world. Actually, there's a few. No, it was great. I had a blast. There's a lot of different builds, and it's always cool to see that kind of like diversity change up and stuff. So yeah, I had a great time. Met a lot of cool people.
Yeah. I loved webcam games. I think, given the state of the world, they're a phenomenal way to get people playing the game. If the alternative is we just get to stare at our cards on our table and wait until the restrictions lift up, or at least we can go out and play, I think this is definitely at least a boon and something that we can leverage to have fun with the community for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So in terms of what this pre-show will provide you guys, just to give some context, we will try and do a 1 hour pre-show before every Wednesday weekly, and this is kind of our way to have a dialogue between we here at Jasco Games and the community to the rest of you guys. So generally, we'll try and break it down into 3 general segments. The first segment being a news segment where we talk about any recent announcements or things coming up, and generally we'll try and keep it fresh and whatever interesting we can bring up. The second segment will be kind of a meta breakdown. We'll give you guys, what we've seen within the previous weeks, between the Wednesday weekly of the prior week, as well as the slew of other tournaments that we see and that we've highlighted in our community calendar. And then going into the last one will be a wild card, depending on what may have occurred in the past week. And maybe we do interviews, maybe we do a fun segment with some of the devs on the team to discuss why certain things are in there. So we'll try and keep it fresh and interesting. And this week we actually have an interview with Tony too, one of the more acclaimed players from the community for the last couple of weeks. So that'll be really fun there. But to kick us off, we do have news, and it's nothing too crazy this week, but we did actually end up releasing the community calendar. So this is going to be our way to try and highlight the different things that are happening throughout the week. Not only are we trying to highlight, tournaments, but, different things that the communities are playing, different streams. So, Tam Talks, we had Market Monday with Slim Jim, which was super awesome. Of course, we had the Carta Magica tournament happening over on Tuesday, and then we have Wednesday, but then the rest of the stuff happening. So we have Learn to Plays, Throwdowns, more tournaments throughout the week, and we just want to showcase, the different ways that everyone has to play. So which is a ton of fun. In terms of yourself, Judge Guy, I mean, you're always down to play, which is something that's been fantastic. Have you been looking at any of these events and thinking about jumping into them?
Oh man, I want to jump into all of them. I want to get as much practice as we can. Like I said, we have that huge thing down at the end of the tunnel for that 250,000. So that's like always in the back of my mind. Like
Mm-hmm.
I gotta practice. I gotta practice. I gotta practice. Every tournament I enter is just another one you can just add it to the belt. Add it. Keep going at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's such a wealth of diversity in terms of how many characters we have to play with, how many symbols are in the game, that I think it's one of those where the more experience you get under your belt, it is one of those that really serve in the back pocket, because every deck can play in so many different variations that I think if you can consume as much experience as you can in terms of the gameplay, you are putting yourself in a much better position for those provisional showdowns, though RLEs, and hopefully not be caught off by surprise.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like I said, playing as a deck so you're like afraid to go up against helps you figure, okay, hey, now I know this deck's weak spot and so forth. It's just extra practice, like I said, never hurts.
Mhm. So in terms of today, of course, we've got Wednesday, which is the Webcam Weekly. Tomorrow we have Learn to Play with Tony too. So not only we're going to interview him today, but tomorrow he'll be doing some things with the community in terms of teaching them how to play, kind of his what state of mind he goes into when he's building decks and all that. So definitely go check that out. If you guys aren't in the MHA Discord already, I definitely recommend that you guys go and jump in there. As well as we have Throwdown Thursdays with Lenoco. That's on the Discord as well. So if you guys want to get some TTS practice in there with decks that you've never got the experience before, definitely recommend it. And then Friday onwards, it's tournaments. We got a tournament on Friday, got a tournament on Saturday, we got tournaments on Sunday. And then finally, yeah, a very heavy end of the week, which is awesome. Usually Friday, Saturday, Sundays, people have a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
open time. Even myself, so I've done done a decent amount of casting, but not too much gameplay. And I think Friday, Saturday, Sunday are going to provide awesome opportunities for me to get on stream and do some gameplay, which I'm really excited to get some grind some games in. And then to wrap up the week, we do have Shuffle Sunday with Shane. You guys know Shane if you are anybody part of the community. Fantastic deck builder. And I believe these Shuffle Sundays are going to be deck techs, you're working out different deck, kind of deck doctor type situation. So definitely check that out if you guys are looking to level up your deck building and get some information from some of the best.
I'm happy that they call it the Shuffle Sunday. It makes me happy.
Yeah, I think it's very on theme.
Scares me.
Yeah. So moving on from the calendar, of course, we did make the HLC, and we just want to remind you guys that, guys, we have a $250,000 prize pool for the top level of play in the game. So we did make that announcement last week. We got the announcement video, which is super awesome. I was super hyped, super excited. And this 32 invitational cash prizing tournament. And there are many routes. And I think that's my favorite part about the HLC is the fact that you have so many different avenues to get in. Not, of course, there's your traditional routes. Hey, if you're one of the best players in the world, you top Nats, you know what, here's your invite. But I think the ability to have it multiple ways, if you just grind out organized play, I think that's probably my favorite. The fact that you reward players who just show up to events, who are a big part of the community and like, I want to fight it out. And, I've paid my dues. I think that's probably my favorite way of getting in. But hey, you join the game late, later half of the year, last chance qualifiers are your chance to be able to get in there, and you feel like you're able to compete against everyone else out there for a chance at that seat. Well then, hey, go ahead and jump in there as well in your last chance. And then finally, which is also additionally probably my other favorite way to get in there, is the Pro Hero MVP. This is the number one player in terms of community, in terms of participation, showing the benefits, the values that we want to be as card game players. Whether you're a hero or a villain, you can still show those great qualities, whether you play one or the other. If you want to change up the title and be the pro villain MVP, then by all means.
No, don't encourage that.
No, that's good. I mean, given that you're a villain that shows all the qualities we expect out of but there's so many routes to get into, so it's super exciting. I know a lot of you guys have been asking for dates in terms of provisionals and regionals, and we're working that out. This month is going to be a big push for the team to try and lock down all those different dates so that we can push events towards onto you guys. So I'm so excited for you guys having additional avenues of play that'll start working towards the HLC. Something that's similar. Now it's not directly tied to OP, but it is something that we've gotten a lot of questions over. Level Up Expo. So I know we've gotten a ton of questions over Level Up Expo being as one of the earliest or most recent tournaments that people are going to be able to play into IRL. So I do have some notes here given how the structure of Level Up Expo will go. So it's not tied to OP, and I just want to point that out, but it is its own big tournament that's going to have additional prizing provided by Jasco Games, which is super awesome. So Level Up Expo is going to be 3 days, and we're going to have 3 individual events on each day. A 64-player constructed single elimination tournament. Where top 8 will be able to receive additional prizing. Now that's awesome because one, the format lends itself that if you have time to only make 1 day of Level Expo, but not the entirety of the weekend, you can still play out an entire tournament and fight for the entirety of the prize pool, which is awesome. And you can go, the Friday, the Saturday, the Sunday, then what works best. And if you want to grind out all 3, hey, if you can top all 3 64-man tournaments, then all the power to you. But additionally, we're going to have pods, which is super sick. I like all day. There are going to be 8-player flights for constructed single elimination. Whenever there's enough players to fire off a pod, we do it. There's also going to be a rival deck sealed, which is super cool. You can either pick up a rival deck over there, or you can bring in your own rival deck as long as it's unmodified and play with it, which is cool. I think that's a very new player friendly to play the game, really get in there and fight it out, which is awesome. Yeah. And then and the last one is actually a demo deck sealed. So 4-player pods of demo deck sealed, a single elimination. So if you have a new player or a friend or anyone that you want to pick up the game, we will have staff on board to demo the game, and then you guys get to keep the demo decks and do your own little tournament in a 4-man pod. And then the winner wins a booster pack. So hey, you get a demo deck and you get a booster pack. I think that's really super cool. Yeah, it's fun, right? Like I think it's a great way to get people in there. So.
Oh yeah.
What about 364-man tournaments? Yeah, so there's going to every single day will have its own 64-man constructed tournament. So that's kind of the big event for the day. So even if you show up on Saturday or on Sunday, there will be one new one fresh to start that day. It'll be single limb across the board, and you get to fight it out to see if you will be the number one hero of Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, or hey, if you're good enough, maybe multiple days. Yeah, so that should be good. I'll see if I can go. Crossing the border is a little tough. I am from Canada, but we'll see if I can make it work to be there. Because if I can, it'd be super hype. I think these type of events are really fun to pick up, get into, and you have the rest of the con to enjoy as well, right? So I think that balance between being able to play the game, but as well as hey, there's a ton going up a Level Up Expo, so it's a ton of fun. You got your badge already, might as well enjoy what the rest of the con has to show. And that's it in terms of the news for this week. Generally just updates in terms of what's already been given. I think the community calendar is probably a big highlight, guys. And the one thing I really want to highlight in terms of the community calendar is, it's not meant to be set in stone, and they're not like only like Jasco Games sponsored events or anything. We want to highlight you guys. So if you guys are a local game store who are hosting online locals that people can participate in, if you guys have these special events in terms of your content creator and you have streams that you want to do, like TAM Talks, like Market Mondays, we want to really be able to showcase and highlight to the community different things and ways that you guys are creating, or the ways that you guys want people to participate. So definitely hit us up. Right now it's very much catered to the Eastern time zone, but we want to open up more to the Pacific time zone. We'd love to work with tournament organizers to get them on the calendar as well. So definitely hit us up, myself or anyone else on the Jasco team, and we would love to talk and get you guys on here, because at the end of the day, the more full this is, the more opportunities is for people to play, and it just means that at any point in time, and that is the goal, as told by those above me, the goal is if you want to play MHA, you will have the opportunity to play MHA any given day of the week, and that's what we want to do here. So definitely let us know if you guys are in there. All right, I talked a lot.
I was like, he's just going.
I kind of get in there and I just word.
No, you're
But
good. You're good. It was great.
yeah, but now we will. It's a lot. It's quite a bit. But we got to push through it. Yeah. But now we'll have a dialogue, and I think that's going to be more fun, because now we're going to move on to the actually, I guess the last announcement, guys, is that most likely this will be the last stream happening over on this channel. We did kick off a new channel for the MHA card game, so it's going to be in chat, so you guys can go ahead and check that out. Follow that channel. We'll be publicizing it over the next week, but most likely official streams and things like the Wednesday weeklies will be happening over there starting next week. So definitely go out, check out that Twitch channel, and definitely follow that, because that's probably what we'll be using to push out events like these and streams like these in the future.
Perfect.
Also much appreciated. Thank you for the gifts and subs. So moving on from that, we do now have a meta breakdown. So moving on, we did release this over last week, following the tournament meta breakdown. This is what we have for the entirety of the meta, and I think we have a good spread. Now, I think the biggest thing we can look about here is that spread going to keep looking like this moving on to this week, right?
I don't know. I think a lot of people want to tear down Kirishima. I think that's
Well,
what's gonna happen.
That's what I think is we're at a place, right? Like Kirishima representing about 20% ish of the field here, and when we're talking about Top Cut, actually representing over a quarter. So we're in a position now where I think we can see two very different shifts in the meta. Either some people saying, forget it, I can't beat Kirishima, and just kind of jumping on that boat, and maybe we see Kirishima's representation expand. Or on the flip side, because you understand that Kirishima is, such a presence in the meta, you go against it. And I've seen a bunch of people talking to community about, hey, this deck, you're just dealing so much hard damage against Kirishima, there's no way he's blocking all of it. And then, maybe he just falters. So I'm not too sure, but like, how do you think, the meta will shift one way or another based on the last week's results?
Well, based on the last week's results, like I said, Kirishima is, the boogeyman of the meta right now, right? Either you have to play him better than someone else can play him, or you have to find a way to counter him while still being able to survive against the other things, which is, that side deck is definitely huge for that.
Right.
I think that there's definitely wiggle room for dealing with it and, still being able to maintain that, momentum as you push through other contenders and that kind of stuff. So Personally, I actually just played Kirishima for the first time because I'm in that boat where, hey, I want to learn how to beat this character, so I have to play him
Hmm.
so I can experience the weaknesses. So
Right.
that's kind of how I always practice.
Yeah, I think it's a phenomenal way. So if we are going to take a step back and talk about like ways that you can like beat out decks like Kirishima when we're looking at these kinds of spreads, that's usually one of my number one advice. You need to understand a deck, and usually there's two facets. That one, how does it feel to play against? But you also do need to pilot the deck. Why? Well, by piloting the deck, you start to like internalize the situations that make you feel uncomfortable, right? Like,
Yep.
oh, my opponent did this and I didn't like the way that made me felt. Well, why? And then once you start to understand that, once you're the opponent on the other side of the table doing that to a Kirishima player, like, oh, this feeling is not great. And I get to push that as hard as I can to really dive in. And this is probably where my in is. So I love that advice. It is my number one piece of advice for anyone who's trying to pick up a deck or trying to understand how to beat a deck. Play the deck, because then you'll understand just what doesn't feel good,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, last week I was playing against Kirishima, and I think in round two, and I was just over the mentality like, okay, if I don't block his attack, he can't use coordinated effort. But then when I went back the other day and I played as Kirishima, I was like, okay, how does this actually feel not have my opponent block? I'm like, well, it's not terrible, but it's not good. I can't use this thing. But the second they do, like, oh, hey, there it is.
Right.
You did coordinate effort and whatnot. So it's definitely a tricky hurdle to cross, but it's doable.
Hmm. Yeah, according to effort, definitely one of the highlight cards that I think everyone's been talking about.
Hmm.
So it is an incredibly good card. It gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of like, okay, well, I can push, but then if you're going to prevent my push, then I'm going to quote unquote punish you for it a little bit. So there's a lot of give and
Exactly.
take advantage of that. And then Kirishima's ability to just, utilize his foundations over and over and over again by being able to get them back to
Mhm.
hand and swap them out is incredibly good. So that's probably what's keeping him up in that totem pole. But he hasn't taken over the meta. I think
Right.
17 out of 100-ish decks is still a pretty good representation, but it's not overwhelming. Now, when we take a look at top cuts and what's being undefeated, there's more of a conversation to have there. Naturally, we need to keep our eyes on it. But there's a great spread. Tokiyomi in big showings. I will say though, the big thing about Tokiyomi, second biggest representation, not a single top. So
Hmm.
what does that say? Does that say something about the Kirishima matchup? Does that say something about, maybe just his longevity in a long tournament? Because, Tokyomi is aiming to have those long chain attacks with Dark Shadows, and maybe if you
Hmm.
can't string that together, maybe you end up missing out on a match.
Yeah, it might just be the consistency of our, it might have also just been the opponent matchups. Like they might have really solid matchup against like your mid-range decks like Hiroshima, and then not do so hot against other ones. And it just really matters of who they got paired against. This, what pushed them one way or the other. So that's another potential aspect of it.
Hmm. Yeah. So, we'll see what the breakdowns end up looking like moving forward. Is Tokyomi, based on his representation in the top cut last week, is that going to keep pushing? But I guess the two other notables before we start breaking down into the smaller numbers, things like Eraserhead did incredibly well, also went undefeated. As of note,
Yeah,
was playing in Void and siding into Kirishima.
that's still scary.
So,
Like, oh, by the way, I still have them. Don't forget.
yeah, like, hey, oh, I guess Eraserhead doesn't do well. Well, how have you ever seen this character before?
He's kind of hidden tech, right?
Yeah. So incredibly good there, especially when they share symbols. And I think Void is definitely a symbol that we're going to see a lot more play. Void has a bunch of great tech that really actually combats the Kirishima mirror really well. So we could actually see off some Void decks arise more. We did see way more good than anything else going into the first week, but those symbol shifts can definitely happen when people feel like, oh, well, if Kirishima is such a big number, Void has a great slew of tech cards that are actually give us to answer that. So I think that might be a great way to try and push that. So maybe we end up seeing that shift. And I guess finally is Jiro. Jiro did end up being nerfed over webcams, just because of the logistics of it. You end up having to reveal your cards as opposed to just looking at them. But nevertheless, big representation. We still see 10 Jiro decks in the breakout, and she's topped everything. She's topped every tournament I see. Still has Jiro topping.
Yeah,
So
she's she's one of those characters where like, hey, if you don't block this first attack, the next one's only gonna get harder, and then that next one is gonna get even harder. So it's like, when do you decide to okay, I should probably block now? It's too late. You
mhm,
know what I mean?
yeah.
So she's a scary, scary character to play against.
Yeah, it's like I will say the nerf can be significant in the sense that your opponent knows how they're going to check. So now they get to play around it, and I will say that is something that when we take it to an IRL table, Jiro only gets better because now your opponent actually has no idea what they're checking. So on this front, if anything, it just goes to showcase how powerful knowledge is, and if the Jiro player is able to be proactive and force the opponent into a position where they're going to have to check those cards anyways in a way, shape, or form that is advantageous to Jiro, you can still definitely get there. And I think Jiro is definitely lined up to be in a very good position.
Yeah, I think with Jiro, it also can play that whole mind game scenario. Like, oh, hey, you know what you're checking. I know what you're checking. Are you sure that's what you want to do? It's
Mm.
just it's little things like that that kind of add a little bit of spice here and there.
Yeah, exactly. Or like, hey, I looked at the top two cards. I can't finish you off here, but it looks like you're about to draw two foundations on what you're hoping is your kill turn. You know what? That we'll pass. How about you just take those two
Yeah, we'll pass.
foundations?
Enjoy.
Yeah, go ahead. You enjoy those. I know my foundations are checking for my blocks. So how about I'll just try again next turn. Yeah, looking at the rest of the breakdown, Shigaraki in big numbers as well, bringing in a 10. Nomu in good numbers as well. And Bakugo was one of my big surprise factors. Now, this could be that, Bakugo just happens to be your favorite character. He can definitely be something you can take out there. But I know a lot of people have been talking about how Bakugo is extremely explosive. He is definitely extremely explosive, as is very thematic, can push a lot of damage, and could be one of those that, sneaks in there in terms of like, you're just not going to be able to deal with everything I can dish out on turn 2. So could very much just be one of those answers to those late game decks that we've been seeing doing incredibly well in the top tables.
Yeah, he feels like the Froppy and the Tokiyami the builds just not at the 7-hander at the 20 health. He can
Right.
keep going a little bit longer and just as fast and just as aggressive. So it's a good call for a lot of the matches right now.
Yeah, so we'll have to see if that number expands, and then the rest of the layouts we have some All Mights, we have some Tenyalita, and then a smattering of 3-1 of almost basically every other character.
Right.
I think I'm excited to see now we've been a couple more weeks now, people have been getting their plus ultra packs. I think Mountain Lady would be super cool to see. Kamui Woods I was surprised that we only got one Kamui Woods last week, and I think he has some incredible good matchups across the spread, and I think he plays in an interesting way where if it's your first time experiencing a matchup against Kamui, you're probably going to play into his game plan more than less. So I think in these early weeks of the tournament, if you end up running Kamui, you're probably in a really good position to be able to not only outplay your opponents, but maybe put your opponents in a position where they outplay themselves because they're not comfortable with the strategy.
Yeah, I tried him not too long ago just to, test the waters with him, no pun intended. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I was just able to. My opponent was like, "Oh, all my attacks are dealing 1 damage now." Like, I'm like, "All right, this is nice. Yeah, I'll eat that. That's fine. I'll take that damage. My turn."
Right. So that's it in terms of like the character breakdowns. If we take it a little bit further, and a huge shout out to Tam Cardwell for breaking it down. It's not his chart specifically, but the numbers did come from him. So in terms, very big push towards good, death, void, air. Those are definitely the symbols we're seeing the most of. Death probably being around the realm of because of all the Nomus and Shigarakis. And then we have good and void and earth. Probably pulled in by the Kirishimas of the world. And then air, we have our Jiros, and I think that's really where all of that centralizes. And then fire, probably because of Tokiyami.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
I was going to say the good and death are also the ones that are in the rival decks and are heavily supported there, which also probably paid into those two elements specifically getting a lot of extra love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's those are definitely the big card pool helps a lot. And you can just see that when you're deck building. Like the water card pool has like fewer cards than all of those. So you're definitely incentivized to play those decks because they also have some incredibly good cards. Not only is the white pool deeper and allows you for more options, but they are really good. The rival decks have some incredibly good starter exclusive cards. So that definitely helps out. But Evil, not a single deck on Evil.
I started on Evil with Mineta.
Okay.
And it felt great. It felt really great, especially with like the amphibious ambushes and just that long chain with Dark Shadow Ruin into the amphibious ambush. It felt great, but that was my kill turn, and it was not consistent enough for me to maintain that.
Right. So is that where you think like Evil is kind of faltering at the moment? It's just the longevity of like what the decks are providing at the moment. Every other symbol is kind of just giving you more for your buck, or?
Yeah, I think focusing I'm not gonna say that there's not a lot of synergy in evil, but I just feel like the strengths are a lot stronger in some of the other symbols,
Okay.
especially in the ones that are in those, like I said, the rival decks that have a lot
Mm.
more variation options at least. So
Right. So just in terms of ceiling, we're just probably seeing, that a bit higher
for
across the
now,
others.
yeah,
Right. Yeah. So I think that's the big thing of interest for me in terms of like, we are working within the constraints of one set now, but I think once the game gets its second set, then, we could probably balance out the availability of all the symbols, and then we're really going to have the ability to see, how we can miss with the symbols to see that
hmm
shift in gameplay, which is really exciting.
oh yeah, just what I need, more options when deck building.
Right?
Oh,
So many cards, so many things I want to include into my decks, and I'm just like, oh, the fear of choice is real.
it comes down to that whole like, do I want to keep it at 50 to be consistent? And then like, all right, now what do I cut? We just got this whole another set, and like, there's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
so many
yeah.
options.
I,
I love it and
I,
hate it at the same time.
oh, 100%. I jump into a deck. I'm like, okay, we're cutting cards. And then an hour out of my deck building session, there are 10 additional cards in my deck. I'm like, what did
Yeah,
I do? What did I do?
I could have sworn it took some out, but now my deck size is doubled. Like, is this a
um,
shadow deck? Or
right? Like, what's going on here? So, straying away from ours, we also had another tournament. We did have the Tuesday weekly from Carta Magica, so a huge shout out to them there, guys. Of course, you guys are welcome to participate in those every single week. They'll be having them. So the undefeated characters, Kirishima again, I think no surprise there, and then Jiro, once again another character that we're very comfortable seeing at top tables at this point.
she's so good.
She is incredibly
Even
good.
with the webcam nerf, it's it's just so good.
Yeah, her card pool's incredibly good, right? Specialist of Sound is super good.
Mhm.
Sound Waves is super solid. So she just is really good pool to support her, which gets her there. In terms of the meta breakdown, we see 5 Kirishimas, 4 Fumikages, 4 Eraser Heads, 3 Bakugos, 2 Nomus, 2 Minetas, and then 2 Ayamas, and then about 8 spreads of other decks. And when we're talking about the top cut, who made it the top 8 decks, we're looking at half of the field being Kirishimas. So 4 out of 5 Kirishimas ending up in the top 8.
Ooh.
And then a Jiro, a Sarah, which is sick. I mean, I love to see Sarah. I think he's
Hey,
a
that's so spicy.
yeah, I think he's a little bit underplayed at the moment, so I love to see him there. And then finally, 2 Eraser Heads filling out a top 8. So typical of what we need to see. Sero is new to the table, which is super awesome, but Kirishima very overwhelmingly being in the top tables at this point. And I think these are the numbers that we probably need to pay attention to a little bit more in terms of like strength of the deck and everything. Because while population representation is nice, and we did see with our previous meta breakdown that he's only about 20% of the field, which I think is a big number. Don't get me wrong, but is not
Yeah.
overwhelming. But when you start looking at top cut numbers, if he is consuming, over 50% of top cut tables, there is probably a power level thing to be looked at there. So naturally, these are all still weekly tournaments. A lot of people are getting, the experience under their belts and trying to figure out, how to metagame the game necessarily. So we need way more data than just this to say anything. But Kirishima definitely a good push if you're trying to play in any tournaments at this point, I think.
Yeah, he's strong, and it's a good starting deck because it's really, I'm not gonna say simple. It's easy to understand. It's hard to master, right? You got to be
Hmm.
able to get that perfect timing of when to pick up, when to put down, what to put down, which knowing what card to pick back up. Um, but it does a lot. I think that's one of my biggest drives towards Kirishima is it has options. It's a toolbox kind of style feel of it.
Right.
So
I mean, you're in a position where effectively your stage is a second hand. And at
correct,
any
yeah.
point in time, like we have cards that have an enhanced ability that allow them to go back to their hand. And now you just basically have that ability straight up on the character.
hmm
So it provides you, like you said, that depth of options. You're essentially working with a second hand. Um, so as a new player, you can go in there and understand like, okay, well, I'm feeling uncomfortable because I don't have, this kind of a block,
hmm
or I need this kind of card in my hand. Whereas with an experienced player, you can now go beyond that and think, instead of just like, okay, what do I need to survive? What do I need to win? And that's what those that wealth of option provides you the most, and why Karishima is seeing as much play as he's seeing at the moment.
I wish I could have seen that Sarah matchup, like Sarah versus Kirishima. Just be like, oh yeah, we're gonna make it this direction now. Like, oh, I picked up the wrong
Yeah,
one. It's like, well,
Yeah.
it's that'd be interesting. I'm curious now. I hope we can see a Sarah match tonight.
Hopefully, if the representation ends up being as wide as it is, then I'm sure we can definitely find those
Oh
matchups
yeah.
early on. We, unsurprisingly, I think to everybody, we don't have 100 players again for this tournament. The inaugural one was definitely a huge, and it's in its own realm in terms of, it's the inaugural one. It's the first big one. We're gonna get people hyped and motivated, and of course, the Gen Con mats are absolutely gorgeous. So no shocker there that people wanted their fight over on that. But we do have, I think, last I checked, we had about 40 players signed up. And of course, as registration closed in the last 20 minutes, I'm sure lots of people love signing up last minute for a tournament. So we're upwards of 40 players, which I think is phenomenal for an event that's supposed to replicate locals, and give you that local vibes. And I think my favorite thing about locals personally is that it's a low pressure opportunity to try out new stuff. Try out new decks, try out new strategies, try out things. And at least, I'm not putting my stature across organized play in jeopardy by trying out something funky. And I think it's the perfect place for people to try and see, how am I going to break Kirishima, or how am I going to break that matchup? How am I going to go and do this? And maybe this one character that didn't see play last week probably has a little in terms of where it could break its meta share.
Oh yeah, I could definitely see that being a thing. Local scene is my go-to for just building all my crazy odd decks. I'm like, let's see if this works. Oh yeah, nope, that did not work. Or hey, this worked way better than I could ever imagine. Never get that opportunity to test it. So locals, I love this kind of locals. So I'm sorry, I'm just excited.
No, please, gush.
I love seeing just all the different builds that people whip up. It's just so cool.
Mm-hmm. DBM Solido, is All Might relevant? All Might is relevant. All Might not only has the most character cards, but he has some very good ones. You have True Form, which plays really interestingly because you get to play all the character cards to be able to accrue advantage. Otherwise, last week we saw All Might 3, which is super awesome. So a lot of different options in terms of All Mights. And you can definitely play them to success. Yeah, absolutely. Not a problem.
I've definitely been on the opposite side of the table from an All Might, and they decided to, All Might 1, I think it was, and they decided to bump up their reverse throw to 60 damage. And I was like, well, I mean, I can't do anything. I'm taking half. So
right.
I guess that's game. That's so scary.
It is very, it can be, definitely. And that's what this game is so good at doing, is that high octane intensity in terms of like, there are so many points in the game where you're scared, then your opponent's scared, and you're just kind of going back and forth, and that tension is palpable.
Someone's got to break the ice and hope that it just keeps going forward. But if they hit that wall before your opponent's at 1 health, if they're at 1 health, you're still alive, right? So, yeah, it's fun. I love it.